What did someone say that made you think that he or she lives under a rock? Went on a day trip to Washington, D.C. with a friend and acquaintance. The acquaintance saw a community of homeless people living out of tents and said, "Oh, that's nice, they're camping out." Roommate in university shouting from the other room to ask for help on a paper she was writing with a completely sincere question. The Holocaust was in World War III, right? A smart person I knew, I told them what cephalopods would look like if they evolved on land. He said they would be worm-like because they do not have brains. That made me question my decision on labeling them smart. What's the Declaration of Independence? This was in senior year government class, coming from a girl who had lived in America all her life and been to decent schools. Had a client who did not know it costed money to bring her dog to the vet. Me, your total today is $345. That covers your exam fee, Fido's vaccines, and the heartworm test. Oh no, wait, I have to pay? My friend recently asked me how to throw a pokeball. We were playing Pokemon. I was tutoring high school students in South Central Los Angeles for anyone outside of the US. This is a low-income, high crime and violence area, and the girl I was tutoring interrupted me to ask, "Are you Chinese?" "I am Asian." Me, "No, I am Korean." Her, that's what I said. "So are you from China?" Me, "No, I am from Korea." Her, "Okay, so you are Chinese then." I just dropped it and continued my best to tutor. It was lunch, and I hear two girls talking. They were basically having a normal conversation until one of them said, "Can we talk about how useless gravity is? Like, why did Isaac Newton even create it?" The girl she was talking to laughed and called her stupid, while I chuckled. When I was a kid, my friend had a paper route, and I'd help him a couple times a week. He had introduced me to Nirvana, and he let me borrow every album. After I finished, in utero, the next day while I was helping him with his paper route, I asked him when Kurt Cobain's next album was coming out. He said, "Kurt Cobain has been dead for a while. Nirvana is not releasing any more albums." Sir, the year is 2022. You have been in a coma for 28 years and 4 months. Oh boy, I cannot wait to listen to all the new Nirvana albums. A friend of mine saw a girl with a fat butt while he was giving us orders through Google Maps. He started following the girl and looking at her butt for about 7 minutes. Then someone from the group asked, "Isn't our destination that way?" We still talk about that with disbelief. Since a week, we have a railroad ticket for €9 that allows you to use the trains, bus and tram. Today, the wife and I got ours, and the guy before us just normally purchased the tickets for the normal price, €29 weekend ticket. A 3-month-long campaign in media, radio, and in papers was not enough for him. I worked for a pizza delivery store, had a lady call up, asked for delivery. I asked for her address, and she said she wasn't going to tell me. So I asked, "How are we supposed to deliver to you if we don't know where you are?" She says she doesn't know what her address is. So I say again, "How do you expect us to deliver to you if we can't find you?" She says that if I won't take her order, then she'll just call someplace else. And I said, "Sounds good," and hung up. I was telling a coworker that I'm from Transylvania originally, and she brought up Dracula because of course. Somehow, the mention of Vlad Tepes came up and another co-worker invited herself to the conversation, telling me that the real Frankenstein was also from there. The stuff I learn about my homeland sometimes. Next time they'll tell me it's where the White Walkers came from, originally when Sauron waged a war against Aladdin. I have so many, but one that really was a facepalm moment. I had to describe to a 60-something-year-old man what a cricket was, as in the insect, cricket. I live in the US where crickets are everywhere. I'm like, how does a person in the US not know what a cricket is? A dude I'm friends with was playing a video game that takes place in Canada. I asked if he was currently in British Columbia, and he said, "No, this is in Canada, you idiot." Me and the Canadian guy in our Discord then laughed at him for a while. Had to show him a map before he believed it actually was in Canada. In his defense, he knows not to listen to anything we say normally, as we're a bunch of trolls. Was talking about stuff with a close friend, and we got onto the topic of money and growing up. This guy lived very comfortably, custom-built pool and house with add-ons, had a nice car, good parental unit, and he told me poverty didn't exist straight. To my face after I told him I grew up in poverty, and he was very serious. His reasoning, no one can live comfortably on that little amount of cash. Yeah, no shit, Sherlock. I figured he was probably really sheltered. So I tried to educate him about it and how it is very possible and how many people live it, but he refused to listen to me. My favorite was an American couple visiting my homeland Scotland, and the guy asked, "Wow, you have coffee here. How long have you had it? Have you tried it yet?" My answer, "Yeah, it's been a few months at least. I have tried it, but I don't like it. It's very bitter and gritty. It gets stuck in my teeth. Like what? Let me preface this with, I'm a northerner that moved to the south of the United States, and what was common is no longer common and vice versa. So I got a lot. My favorite is talking to a coworker, 18 maybe, and they looked at me like I was crazy and asked, like a Subway sent a new higher line cook to a competing restaurant across the street for a bag of steam, since we ran out of steam. 10 minutes later, the entire kitchen is laughing so hard as we see the poor guy very carefully walk across the road with an inflated garbage bag. Seen that. Dude knew what was up, played along, came back with bucket with few inches of hot water, closed with lid, opens up and shouts, "Catch it guys, it's going away." During the presidential election of my country a few years ago, a colleague told me, if X is elected, the country will be appeased. I was like, girl, are you serious? There wasn't a single candidate that would have had that effect. But this one even less than most. I was so floored I couldn't find anything to say as a response. A family member who works at a college said that his co-workers have been saying, "What's going on with this group of kids this year? What's wrong? What's wrong? What do you think? What could have affected the performance, behavior, and mental health of students of all ages after these last few years? Why even upperclassmen might be having a hard time adjusting to living on campus?" My first thought was, do you work with Rip Van Winkle? I'm a Scouser who ended up in Solihull, United Kingdom, just by Birmingham, and married a girl from Solihull. When I first met her mother, the first thing she said to me was, "I don't like Scousers." I asked her how many Scousers she knew. "None," she replied. "I live in Kurdistan, Iraq, and I was talking with this American girl." Like she literally said, "Oh my god, you have a personal computer and Wi-Fi there." Like people be assuming we live like a Counter-Strike global offensive map. Health educator to rural African women, you have the right to say no to anyone, even your husband. Your body belongs to you. No, they don't. And no, it doesn't. This isn't a nice culture like you're used to. If they'd believed her, they'd get beat up or killed. Did you unregister yourself at this address with the council? Unregister? What's that? Person who didn't know they had to tell the local government that they had moved. Yes, an adult who had moved for at least the second time in her life. Good grief. Had an in-depth discussion with an Amish guy once. He didn't know what the Holocaust was. Just ask your parents for money. When I told the international student from China I couldn't afford something, my mom's a public school teacher and my dad owns a business that ebbs and flows. I'll never forget the story of a professor who actually got sacked from her role because she refused to believe that Australia is a country. A student nearly failed their assignment because of the professor's refusal to believe that Australia is a country. How can you go through life, invest, and take up an academic job role as a professor and not know that Australia is a country? A man in London asked me where my accent was from. I said I'm South African. He responds with, "There's no white people in Africa." So I asked him if he knew who Nelson Mandela was. He said he does. Then I asked if he knows why Nelson Mandela is famous. I could see the light bulb go on in his eyes. This was a black man who had never left the UK. An ex of mine was describing the Christ the Redeemer statue in Brazil and was like, "Yeah, you know, that statue of that guy with his arms out wide, and she puts her arms out wide, and she puts her arms out to mimic it." And I just sat there for a second and was like, "You mean Jesus Christ?" And she just slowly realized her mistake. My mom said she doesn't know how to download a picture from Google. She's been using computers for over 10 years now. Back when the original Walking with Dinosaurs came out, I was remarking on how great the effects were / how real they looked. It was 1999. My aunt, who was in her 50s at the time, said, "Oh, I thought they'd found a place." She thought it was real. Talking to a friend years ago about how it would be cool to visit England one day, friend's cousin next to us said he wouldn't really want to go to England because of the language difference. I say, "You mean the accent?" "You think you'd have a problem understanding the accent there?" he says. "No, the language." I say, "What do you mean?" "They speak English there, just like us with a different accent." "What did you think they spoke?" He says, "I don't know. I thought they spoke like French." I'm in medical school. A classmate genuinely thought that males have one fewer rib than females, based on how Eve was created from Adam's rib in Genesis 2. Did they also think that children of amputees would be born with fewer limbs? I had a friend / co-worker, and we were watching TV back when the nuclear power plant in Fukushima got hit by earthquake / tsunami. There was a lot of uncertainty about the damage and what will happen and they showed one of the reactor block. He looks at it and then asks me, "So this is where the atoms are stored?" In Germany, we say Atomkraftwerk, atom power plant. It was very awkward that a grown man did not know what an atom means. This was at the beginning of COVID, when everything shut down and it was all over the news. It wasn't some secret. My friend asked me during this time if we could hang out, and again, this was when everything was shut down, so we literally couldn't. So I was like, "No, we can't, because of COVID." He was like, "What's that, yeah?" Thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to subscribe.